I want to hear cannons. Downfield, pull up, ball to the 5, touchdown Tampa Bay. My Evans does it again. Fire the cannons, Bucs.
It's first and goal. That's picked off. That's picked off. And who else? Rondé Barber. And the Tampa Bay Buccaneers may ride to the Super Bowl with that one.
Third down, 18. Dropping Gannon, looking Gannon. Throws up with a head. Intercepted. 30. Derek Brooks 30. Brooks to the 25, 20. Derek Brooks all the way. There it is. The dagger's in. We're going to win the Super Bowl. And then the cannons come. Fire them. Keep on firing them. Keep on firing them.
Hello and welcome back, Bucs fans, to a brand new edition of the Cannon Fire Podcast, coming to you live following the Tampa Bay Buccaneers' dominant Week 1 performance against the Washington Commanders. 37-20 your final score as the Buccaneers give the home crowd quite the show here to kick off their 2024 campaign. There is a lot of good to take away from this game. There are some things we can obviously be critical about. We'll do all of that and then some before the end of the show. And do not forget, phones are on for this episode as well. We would love to hear from you. Call into the Autograph fan line, open now, 305-224-1968. The meeting ID on your screen, 747-973-0150. I'm your host, Rhett Matthew, joined alongside me, as always, my good buddy and co-host from BucsNation.com, Evan Wanish. 37-20, my friend. We talked a lot about the new offense under Liam Cohen, but this is one hell of a first impression.
Certainly is. And look, this is a Commanders defense we talked about in the pregame, right? Was not very good. And Dan Quinn comes in and they're hoping they're really sorting some things out, right? But it wasn't going to be a finished product. And the Buccaneers certainly took advantage of that today. There were multiple times where, look, the Commanders maybe had a little bit of a window, right? A little bit of a sliver of hope, and the offense was able to shut the door on that right away. I think really the nail in the coffin was really the 3rd and 17 screen to Chris Godwin that picked up the first down. Yeah. That if you're a defense, that can't happen. But as far as the offense goes, great execution, by the Buccaneers specifically. I mean, all day in the screen game, and we'll get into individual players and whatnot later on in the show. But yeah, overall, I mean, you really can't complain much about the offense, I don't think. I mean, sure, early in the first half, the score could have been, they could have put close to 50 points up on the board had they not settled for a couple of field goals there. That's one thing that you can say, not finishing drives. They weren't as sharp, but at the same time, it's week 1. And I think you got to remember that you're not going to be firing on all cylinders right away. And especially in a new offense, which I get it. It's similar to the Dave Canales offense, but it's still new. You're still going to be learning some things, trying to work out the kinks. And today, you couldn't have asked for a better day, I think, from this offense. And the defense, doing what they need to do as well.
Yeah, didn't have to punt the ball until halfway through the third quarter. They dictated the game. And again, this new offensive system, we got a lot of things we can talk about, but individual performances, you can't talk about it without talking about the quarterback, and that is Baker Mayfield. QB1, his day looks like this. 24 for 30, 289 yards, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions. What a day for Baker Mayfield. I thought, early on, there were a couple of week 1 mistakes. I mean, from the top down, there were a couple of week 1 mistakes. We had also talked about on the pregame shows, it's week 1 around the league. There's going to be some things that have to be cleaned up. But for the most part, I mean, if this is a baseline for where the Bucs are building for the rest of their season, aside from a couple of mistakes, the Jalen McMillan off target on that opening drive of the game, he ultimately ends up making up for that in a big way, which we'll talk about here in a second. But yeah, man, Baker Mayfield, one hell of a day for him. Able to not only take care of the football, find his wide receivers, and extend plays in the pocket. I felt like there were countless times today where I thought the play was over. Baker's able to make some plays with his legs, keep the play alive, either find a guy downfield or scramble for a 5 to 8 yard pickup. I thought he played maybe one of his best games in a Buccaneer uniform today.
That's what I was going to say as well. I think, it was pretty impressive. And again, who he's playing matters, but hey, this is the NFL. I mean, these guys are paid to go out there and perform as well. And he was just locked in. I mean, just really from the get-go. I mean, they take the opening drive and, it doesn't result in 6. They end up having to kick a field goal there, which, sucks. But and then he had a couple of misses here and there, but I mean, really, played a clean game. Pocket awareness was great, and just like you said, it was. It seemed like the Commanders just they got some pressure, and I think that's something that I think the Bucs will want to work out. But I do think that the pressure that was being able to be avoided by Baker Mayfield was very impressive. So, yeah, he had a couple of throws. I mean, the first one, the first touchdown of Mike Evans, that's a fantastic throw. That's a guy, Mike Evans and Mike Evans and Baker Mayfield playing together for so long, you could tell, and it was a really nice ball there. So, yeah, I thought Baker was just money today, specifically on third down as well. So yeah, I thought they were really, really good, and Mayfield, like you said, I think played one of, if not his best game in the Bucs uniform. So hopefully you can build on that, right? Hopefully, but I mean, the first impressions in a brand new offense is certainly a good one.
Yeah, quick passes, you get into the hands of your playmakers, guys like Mike Evans, Chris Godwin. It felt like effective play action as well, regardless of what the run game looked like in the first half. We'll talk about that as we continue the conversation on the offense. But another thing that I noted as well, a lot more pre-snap motion, a lot of guys moving around. And another thing that may be a new fold in the offense this year as well, seems like Baker has a lot more say-so at the line of scrimmage. He's got a chance to make more changes at the line, checking into different plays. We saw him do that at least 3 or 4 different times throughout this game. And again, just to kind of continue the point, he looks well. He looked really good in that week 1 performance, played well in the pocket. But as far as this offense, it seems like more of the same in a good way. I think the Bucs are picking up at a very good point. And again, just like you said, who you play matters, but there's so much to like, I think, about where the Bucs offense is right now. It's
and then
literal
more
tip of the cap to
specifically,
Liam Cohen here. What a debut for him as well.
Yeah. Specifically, on third down, I mentioned that. I mean, they were 9 of 13 on third down. I mean, that's a pretty good, it's pretty efficient, pretty good average. So, I thought, like I said, I thought the offense moved the football again. Not playing a great defense, but you know what? It'd be more worrisome if they had 16 points, if they just didn't score at all in the second half, and then that would be more worrisome against a defense like that. Against a bad defense, that's what you're supposed to do against that bad defense, and they went out there and they showed that. Again, was it perfect? No. There were some times where I think even the broadcast had mentioned, a couple of negative runs there that I think they're going to want to sort of get out of their system, and the running game wasn't perfect. It was good enough though, and look, when you're passing the ball that much, it's a passing league anyway. I think ultimately if the Bucs go where they want to go, it's going to be because of, the passing offense. In today's NFL, just running the ball and running the ball and running the ball isn't what's going to win you a bunch of games. So I don't really think it's a huge deal, but something they want to improve upon. But that's just like Dave Canales was trying to do last year. That's going to be a work in progress. That's not something that's going to, just like we talk about the Commanders defense getting better. The Bucs running game is not going to happen. It's not going to happen like that. It's not going to happen overnight. So I think they were good enough in this game, but I mean, especially when you have Mayfield locked in like that, you got the receivers. I thought the running backs, when they were involved in the passing game, were terrific. I thought Rachaad White in that aspect was terrific. When you have all of that, it's pretty tough to stop, regardless of how good or bad the run game may be.
Yeah, and I know it took him, kind of the course of 4 quarters to ultimately get worked into the game, but wanted to talk about Bucky Irving as well while we do touch on the run game. Like you said, it's a work in progress. I think it was a 93 total yards of rushing between Rachaad White and Bucky Irving. Last year, the Bucs averaged 89 a game. So baby steps, if you will. They are making progress, but when you also have a quarterback who is throwing for 300 yards in a game, you may not need to lean on the run game as much to dictate the pace of the
Baker had 3 touchdowns, only 6 incompletions.
Right.
I mean, this dude was locked in. I mean, he was locked in.
Before we talk about the top pass catchers, though, wanted to highlight Bucky Irving in particular. 9 carries, 62 yards. This guy averages 6.9 yards per carry in his NFL debut. Again, took him a little while to get fully worked into the game, but I feel like that's a great way to use him. I mean, he was, getting more effective as the game went on, it felt like.
The difference between him and Rachaad White is evident to me. You can tell. Now, and that's not saying Rachaad White's bad. I'm not saying that, but they're 2 different style of runners. They just are. There's just more burst, with Bucky Irving. Like you can just tell, even when it doesn't gain a bunch of yards, it seems so much quicker. And again, that's Rachaad White's style is fine. I think Rachaad White's a solid football player. But yeah, Bucky Irving's style of running, it just flashes right on that TV screen, and it's you can tell which running back is in the game whenever they get the ball because there's a big difference. They most of the time when they're on passing downs in the screen game and stuff, they did use Rachaad White. They didn't really use Bucky Irving much in that aspect of the game. But what I'm fine with that, is Rachaad White is a pretty good receiver. I trust him as a receiver out of the backfield, and his patience I think was help setting up blocks on a screen or whatever. That helps. And I was very impressed with Bucky Irving, and I actually thought as far as running backs goes, I was more impressed by Bucky than I was Rachaad White. Again, not so much a slight on Rachaad White, but more of Bucky did a lot of good things today.
Yeah. And Rachaad White is a pass catcher today, 6 receptions, 75 yards, one of those being a big-time 32-yard reception on a screen pass that was almost negated by an illegal man downfield call on Graham Barton, but the replay officials take a look, they review it, and ultimately decide the Buccaneers do pick up that yardage, so it ends up being one of the biggest plays of the day for this Buccaneers offense. Some other top pass catchers today, Chris Godwin, your leading receiver, 8 receptions, 83 yards, and a touchdown. Mike Evans, 5 receptions, 61 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Chris Godwin and Mike Evans picking up exactly where they left off. What more is there to say about these guys, really?
Well, Godwin was a third down machine today. I mean, it seemed like whenever they needed a conversion, Godwin was the guy they went to. And some days, that's going to be, with all the weapons the Buccaneers have. And is it like 2020 where you got, Godwin and Evans and AB and Gronk? No, but with the weapons they have, it's still darn good. And that's what it's going to be sometimes. Sometimes it's going to be the Chris Godwin, game where he's going to be getting the clutch catches and this and that. And sometimes it's going to be the Mike Evans game where he's getting a bunch of targets. The second half, Mike Evans wasn't as involved, right? It seemed like Chris Godwin was the guy that when they needed a third down conversion, it was Godwin. Obviously, the tight end really not much involved at all today. Jalen McMillan, that's pretty efficient by McMillan, isn't it? I think he's going to have a good career if every pass he catches is a touchdown. I thought Godwin and Evans, look, they came as advertised today, and I thought, more importantly, I thought Chris Godwin looked again like Chris Godwin. Like last year, at times he kind of didn't, and today I thought it was more of a throwback to the 2020, 2019 Chris Godwin. Even catches a touchdown there, so it was pretty important. I think last year, I think it was week 8 or week 9 before he got in the end zone, so he wastes no time this time around.
Yeah, and I think some of these changes in the offense under Liam Cohen, it's just going to amplify Chris Godwin's ability to take over the game. He has the ability. He has the talent, he has the tool set, and he can definitely show you why he can be one of the most dependable wide receivers the Bucs have. Today with 8 catches, led the team.
One more thing. Note about Mike Evans. Anytime touchdown bet.
Dude, hey, 2 out of 3. 2 out of 3 on this week's episode of Betting the Bucs. Not a bad start at all. I will tell you, a Rachaad White touchdown, anytime touchdown today, probably would have made me $150 more.
Honestly, I think I have to check it. I think we went 4 for 4. I'm pretty sure because Rachaad White caught 6 balls. I had 3 over 3.5. And then it was, I think, 75 combined yards, and he had 75 yards receiving. And I had Mike Evans anytime touchdown, Bucs money line. So if hey, that's your sign, maybe watch Betting the Bucs. Can make you some money.
One last note on the receiving group here before we get to our first caller. 1 reception, 32 yards for the rookie Jalen McMillan. Couple of throws Baker was going to want back on that opening drive of the game, and he makes up for it in a big-time way. Probably the same play, I think, that he overthrew McMillan on earlier in the game is a 32-yard reception and touchdown for his first catch in the NFL. Just like you said, the definition of effective. I mean, a huge part in why the offense was able to do what they were able to do today, 37-20. And, McMillan, again, another great first impression out there today.
100% efficiency rate. So Trey Palmer had a few penalties or there, a little bit of confusion. That's more knickknacks, I think, in the offense. But yeah, McMillan certainly flashed today.
Yeah, a couple of week 1 moments out there today, a couple of false start penalties, some things that you wish you could take back. But it is what it is. Just got to clean it up and get better throughout the course.
16 more. You got plenty of chances.
Absolutely. Plenty of football left here in 2024. Our first caller of the 2024 season. You're on the Cannon Fire Podcast. Who's this?
What's up, guys? It's Richard from the West Coast.
Scream it from the rooftops, Richard. How you doing, my friend?
Doing good, bro. Doing good, my man. Always a good day when your Bucs or our Bucs start off the season with a good win, with a strong win, and for a win to make kind of some Buccaneer history, right? Our first time doing 4 straight seasons to open up the season with a win. It's amazing stuff. It's a good time to be a Bucs fan.
Yeah, 3rd straight season in a row for a Week 1 touchdown for Mike Evans as well. I mean, Richard, 37 points. When you were hearing about this Liam Cohen offense throughout the offseason, we talked a lot about the new and improved run game. We knew that Baker was able to make plays with the receivers that he had in Tampa. Big-time debut for Jalen McMillan, but 37 points? Hey, listen, I know they were playing the commies. Like, don't get me wrong. It's important who you play. And Week 1 is full of overreactions. We saw plenty of them on the internet today. But, I mean, Richard, there is just so much to take away, I think, from not only Baker Mayfield's performance, but all the new folds we're going to see in this Liam Cohen offense. I'm so excited that this is our starting point this year.
Dude, it's been amazing. That's amazing, right? Like, I didn't even think we were going to hit 30 points, let alone 37. Mm-hmm. That's going to be one of the highest scores to open up the season, for this franchise, and I think so far it's up there with any of the teams. Unfortunately, I know the Saints had a pretty good outing earlier today, but
it's against the Panthers.
Yeah, F those guys. but 37, and we won by double digits, and with an supposedly improved Washington defense under Dan Quinn, and we had some key players out. But gosh, man, Baker had a magical day, man. How many times did he break a sack, run? There was that one time when he ran and he threw it and overthrew
McMillan.
I forgot which receiver it was. McMillan, yeah. And he could have just kept going. Maybe he wouldn't have converted it, but it would have been something. Never know. But regardless, he was breaking tackles and sacks, and he really was the heartbeat of the offense, of the team for sure.
Absolutely. Richard, before we let you go, we're going to talk about the other side of the football here in a little bit. Bucs were down some reinforcements on that defensive line. Logan Hall and Kalijah Cansey both missing the game today, but they're able to muster up a couple of sacks, although Jaden Daniels, he certainly made some plays with his legs, something we were talking about on a lot of the pregame shows this week. What did you think of the defense here in Week 1? A lot of injuries out there as well, so a lot to talk about.
It was a little scary because, there's a lot of hype with Kalijah Cansey making, second year. We're hoping he's going to make that jump. And then late last week, he shows up on the injury report, and now he's out to start the game. Same thing with Logan Hall. And then on top of that, during the game, we lost not just Zion to a concussion, but his backup,
Bryce Hall.
Yep. So that was very concerning at first. I'm actually just very glad that they didn't have some star receivers to really take advantage of that. I'm really glad that the defensive line was able to not suffocate, but affect Jaden Daniels so he wouldn't make those big, long, converting throws. And if he's only going to be making plays with his legs, that's fine, that's cute. But you know what? Sometimes it doesn't win games, and all the time it never wins you championships. So for that, oh well, go Bucs, baby. Let's go.
Go Bucs. Richard, appreciate you hanging out with us on the West Coast, and we look forward to talking to you more throughout the rest of the season. Have a great night, my friend. Go Bucs. Let's get to our next caller here from the 813. You're on the Cannon Fire Podcast. Hello, who's this?
It's MK.
MK, what's going on, my friend? How you feeling?
Good, how are you? What's up, guys? What's up, Evan?
What's up, Mikey?
What do you guys think of the games today?
I mean, hey, a win's a win, but basically, I mean, 17-point win. But I mean, let's face it, it was pretty much 37-14 by the end of it, and then they score that garbage time touchdown. Yeah, I mean, it was it was really good by the offense. It's something that we didn't really, neither one of us expected, and most people that I saw, didn't really expect a ton from this offense. A lot of people were saying in the 20s, right? 23, 26, 27, 20. Not many pictured 37. So, Richard, said, oh, that might be one of the highest totals for the Buccaneers in a season opener. It's up there. It might be. I'll have to do some research and see if it potentially is the most that they've scored in a week one game. But yeah, it was definitely a great performance by the offense, and something hopefully that they can build on. As for the defense, they were down a couple guys. Don't know why they didn't call. Don't know why they didn't call number 92 off the street to step in, and I'm sure you would have loved that. But little inside joke, but yeah, so I mean, and the defense did their job basically. It wasn't pretty at times. It wasn't like amazing, but there was a few times Jane Daniels got out of it and scrambled, but we expected that to happen, and ultimately, they did enough, get off the field, get a couple of sacks there. So, what did you think of the game?
Man, Bucky Irvin, and I noticed a lot. He looks really good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean it's the burst is evident. The burst is definitely there, and like we were talking about, before we opened the lines up, it's a clear, and this isn't a thing on Rachaad White. I want to make that clear. But it's a clear difference between Rachaad White's running style and Bucky Irving's. Bucky Irving just goes, whereas like Rachaad White's patient, and either way is fine. Like Le'Veon Bell was a heck of a running back for the Steelers, and he was one of the most patient guys ever. Like, it was like maddening at times, but it worked for him. So it worked for Rachaad White, and yeah, Bucky Irving definitely had a great debut. I mean, really, the two rookies on offense. I mean, Graham Barton had a few miscues here and there, but the two rookie skill position players, Jalen McMillan and Bucky Irving, I thought both made their presence felt for sure.
Mikey, what do you think about Baker Mayfield after today? How long is he going to look like this? Is the ride going to come to an end here in a couple of weeks, or is he going to continue to play like one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL? Because that's what he looked like today.
Yeah, right. I mean, next week's definitely going to be a challenge against the Lions. I think it is up in Detroit.
Mm-hmm.
So that's definitely alone going to be a little scary, at least in my opinion. I guess just based off the two losses we took from them from last year. But that's just me, though. I don't think we're gonna win next week, honestly. But
well, let's worry about next week then. All right?
Yeah. What the hell, Mikey? I thought you were gonna come in and brighten the mood. You're already bummed out about next week. Game hasn't happened yet. Enjoy the win, my friend.
Oh yeah.
Thanks for calling, Mikey.
See ya.
See you, boss. Classic MK. Remember, the autograph phone lines are still open. 305-224-1968, meeting ID on your screen. We can talk a little bit about the defense here in the second half of the show. But honestly, Evan, before we do that, I think we need to highlight some more point scores for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And you can't talk about that without talking about our boy, Money Mac. There was a sliver of doubt.
Right out of the gate, dude, they test him.
There was a sliver of doubt here with Chase McLaughlin headed into the 2024 season. Popped up on the injury report later this week. I think Thursday and Friday, he was still kind of dealing with a leg issue. Not entirely sure what that was, but today does not matter. He is damn near perfect, or he is perfect. 3 for 3, 100% of his field goals hit. His longest from 56 to open the game, and he in total puts up 13 points for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in this one. Never a doubt.
As soon as he hit, I was like, we're all right. All right. I'm good. Like, it's like, okay, all right. No worries here. Like, that preseason was a fluke. I mean, every single kick is like right down the middle. I mean, so yeah, I wouldn't really worry too much about Chase McLaughlin. So yeah, hopefully it's another strong season for him. It was another very, very, very strong start. So not as great of a start for Jake Camarda. I mean, he had one punt, and it was a pretty short one. Again, sample size. You only get one shot, I guess. So you don't really have much of a sample size to really redeem yourself there. So hopefully Camarda can be a little bit better. And I say that because, Todd Bowles was very open about it, that they weren't really thrilled with the punting situation. So this is a year for Camarda where he's going to have to be good. But yeah, Chase McLaughlin, Money Mac, right out of the gate. I mean, like I said, a 56-yarder right away. I was like, man, like, all right, yep, it's all good here. So was really nice to see.
Headed into the matchup this week, there was a lot of talk about what Washington brings to the table, and one of those things being this rookie quarterback, the first NFL start for quarterback Jayden Daniels, Heisman Trophy winner out of LSU. Washington picks him up. They give him a good supporting cast. Brian Robinson is a talented running back. They go and pick up Austin Eckler from the Chargers over the offseason. They go and pick up Zach Ertz. You've got Luke McCaffrey as well, who they tried to highlight today for sure. He had a couple of big-time catches. And, he has a decent team around him. But regardless of the talent that he had around him, I don't think we were worried about the pass catchers. We weren't necessarily worried about a guy like Zach Ertz or even what an Austin Eckler could do. We were worried about what Jayden Daniels could do with his legs today. And while he didn't win the game, he led his team in rushing. 16 carries for 88 yards, averaging 5.5 yards per tote. 2 touchdowns on the day, one of those being in garbage time at the end of the day. But I hate to toot our own horn here. That's not necessarily what I'm doing. But I think things went about as well as they could have for Tampa Bay, facing a guy that we knew was going to cause issues with his legs.
Yeah, and he did in the first half a lot. It was pretty frustrating to watch, I think, because it was like, man, like they're the edge defenders are breaking contain, like there is no spy on him, and it's just like, okay, like you keep giving him that 7-8 yards to carry it, he's going to take it. It's going to end up being 12-13 yards. Like that's because of the speed that he has. So it was frustrating to watch at first. I think they did make some adjustments because, in the second half, I mean, and maybe it was, he's getting a little sore, maybe, who knows, but their commanders don't want to rough him up too much, but he didn't really even try and run as much in the second half as he was in the first half. So took a couple of good licks there. The Antoine Winfield thing, helmet to helmet. I didn't necessarily think that was a penalty. I think if his helmet doesn't pop off, I think it might not be called, to be honest with you. And I didn't think the officiating was too good today. So if his helmet doesn't pop off, I'm really not sure that's a penalty. I didn't think it was a penalty, but yeah, again, I think they did as well as you could because against him in the run game, at least, because he is a weapon. I mean, he is going to utilize his legs an awful lot this season to all of his opponents. And, it's a valuable thing. They need more talent there, but like he's a weapon there. Now, does he need to be better at throwing the football? Sure, but I think it's going to be better when they have more talent. The offensive line for Washington, I thought specifically early, was breaking down a lot. It was just Jayden Daniels' speed was able to really avoid a lot of things. So that really is going to help out Washington's O-line overall numbers, because I think he's going to be able to avoid a lot of sacks, just like Baker Mayfield did today. The Bucs offensive line, specifically the interior offensive line, I thought struggled at times with Darren Payne, Jonathan Allen. I thought they struggled to contain those guys a lot of the time, and a lot of it was coming from the middle, which we assumed it was going to with the Commanders' defense. And the Bucs defensive line, I thought early played with a lot of energy, play with a lot of speed, but as the game went on, they sort of wore down a little bit, maybe played coverage a little bit more. And I didn't think it was a coincidence that when they started to play coverage a little bit more, Jayden Daniels stopped running a little bit more. So yeah, he definitely was effective with his legs, but overall, I mean, look, you're not going to get as far as you want to go. Just like Richard kind of said, like with your legs, you can only do so much as a quarterback, and you're going to need to throw the football. And Jayden Daniels just was not able to do that. So overall, I thought it was a pretty solid. Again, they did what they needed to do on defense. So I think it was pretty good.
Yeah, 17 for 24 passing, 184 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions. Just like you said, I thought the Bucs did a pretty good job, at least the pressure up front, of breaking down the play against the Washington offensive line, forcing Jayden Daniels to make some plays with his legs. Now, he's got the speed and the ability to do that consistently, as we saw today. But again, a lot of those passing numbers that I just mentioned, 17 for 24, 184 yards, most of those numbers didn't come until the fourth quarter of the game, late third quarter, fourth quarter, when they were effectively moving the ball down the field. But like, there's less than 5 minutes left in the game. You get a big time reception from Austin Eckler for, I think, 25 plus yards. So there was a little bit happening there where the context is important. But regardless, I thought the Bucs did a decent job today, given how shorthanded they were on the defensive line as well. Before we talk about the injuries on the defensive side of the ball, wanted to get your thoughts as well on some of the guys who may have stood out to you for better or for worse. I thought there were quite a few instances today on the defensive side of the ball where, we talked this week about making the play when it's there to be made, and there were a few examples of the Bucs just kind of whiffing on some plays. I thought KJ Britt, played his part, but certainly didn't have the best afternoon, left one sack early in the game wide open.
Yeah, KJ Britt was, you can tell, I mean, he's not the most athletic guy, and that's okay. Like, we've talked about that before, but yeah, there was a few times where he was overmatched a little bit with Washington's speed, especially with Jaden Daniels with running, or whether it was Austin Eckler or Brian Robinson Jr. There was a few times there. One dude who stood out to me, and I mean, look, it's about darn time, because I mean, Joe Tryon-Schwenka had a good day, and I mean, look, this isn't the first time that he's had a good game. It's not about that. It's about doing it over a 17-game season. So we'll see, but overall, pretty encouraging start for a guy who needs a big year. And he had that sack and the forced fumble. Didn't go the Bucs' way. So there was 0 turnovers on either side of the football for either team. So they have a pretty clean game, but that was the one that was almost a turnover, and it was caused by Joe Tryon-Schwenka really beating the tackle there. So I thought Jordan Whitehead was pretty active in this game. Almost had a pick, came up with a few nice tackles. Levante David, I thought, did his job. Servassier Dennis played more than I thought he would in this game.
Yeah,
I didn't expect to see him out there as much as I did. There was I think it was one of the first drives. I looked and I was like, who is 8? And I was like, oh, wait a minute. I was like, oh, that's Servassier Dennis. He's like, I didn't really expect him to be out there. So, I thought, again, I don't think anybody was like, oh my God, this guy was just incredible. But I think it was good enough to where, like, everybody played their part. They did their job, especially with the injuries. Like you said, Kalijah Kancey down, Logan Hall down. That was just before the game. During the game, they go down even more, and with Zion McCollum, Bryce Hall, Josh Hayes. So playing with one corner essentially for the rest of the game was not ideal, and they made it work.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be an interesting situation because, let's face it, I know it's already been said today, but who you play matters. This was a rookie quarterback in his first NFL start. I don't think there was much of a threat, especially as the game went on, that Jaden Daniels was just going to throw all over this Buccaneers defense. I don't think it was happening.
Either Luke McCaffrey or Zacchaeus.
Right. I don't think it was happening that way, but look at next week's matchup. Yep. Look at the team. Look at the quarterback, especially that you are playing, and what they're working with on the offensive side of the ball. What's going to happen when you are this thin in the secondary against a better team, a better quarterback, and an offense that can effectively move the ball on you much better?
Yeah, we'll have to wait and see. Obviously, the injury report this week. I have to see now. McCollum did exit with a concussion, so unfortunately, it goes into the concussion protocol thing. It's not necessarily if he feels good. So we'll see just how quickly that can, he can pass it. I don't know about Josh Hayes. Obviously, you're hoping that a guy like Kalijah Kancey, can be back. Logan Hall can be back, and we'll see. I mean, obviously, the Bucs had their practice squad elevations this past week. CJ Brewer's one of them. You may see a corner be another one if a guy like Zion McCollum can't go next week. So, but again, you're right. It's a different beast. It's you're at the same time, you can say, oh, the defense, they were shorthanded and they did well. You're playing a rookie quarterback who the rookie quarterback's first instinct is to run, by the way. It's not to pass. It's to run the football. And also it's a team with like Terry McLaurin, which by the way, I mean, Jamel Dean, I don't know if he was like shadowing McLaurin, but like he was on him for a lot of the game, and Terry McLaurin was basically non-existent in this game. Had 2 catches for 17 yards. Austin Eckler was the Commanders' leading receiver, 4 catches for 52 yards. Brian Robinson was the next leading receiver at 3 catches for 39 yards. That for 49 yards. That's 2 running backs right there. So the Bucs did a great job on the opposing wide receivers. Zach Ertz got involved a little bit, not as much as I thought he would, but yeah, it would be interesting to see when the Bucs are against a better competition. How do they fare? But so far, so good. And again, being shorthanded is one thing, but these guys are still pros. They're still paid to be in this league, and you got to go out there and execute.
Yeah, I thought it was a great afternoon for them being as shorthanded as they are. I also think we need to highlight Christian Izien, who stepped into this game playing outside corner, which isn't something he's been practicing as. It's not something he has a ton of experience in. And he made some plays down the stretch. Had a big time stop on a 3rd and 5 later in the game with a pass deflection, and I Bleav ended the drive for Washington.
Yep.
He played really well today. And just to highlight that entire room, their effectiveness in stepping up with all those injuries you just listed. Bryce Hall, I don't want to assume his season is over, but it was a pretty gruesome sounding injury.
Yeah.
Doesn't sound like he's going to be back anytime soon. And then, of course, the guys they didn't elevate today, but the guys that they lost, their effects are going to be felt if they miss some time. So Christian Izien played great today among a lot of guys who stepped up in that secondary.
It's that next man up mentality. I think, a lot of players, you talk about it a lot, but a lot of players have to have it. I mean, it's a real thing. It's a cliche. You hear it all the freaking time, but it's real. It's when one goes down, the other guy has to step up. And the Bucs were able to do that. Again, by the point where, Bryce Hall had to exit, the Bucs did have the lead. And again, they were in a position where it was a little bit maybe easier, but hey, you still got to play ball. And, I thought they did a pretty good job. Like you mentioned, Izien coming in, playing a position he's not overly familiar with, and playing it pretty darn well. And I thought, like I said, I thought it was a good stepping. So was the defense terrific today? No, I think, we talked about the first half, we talked about the offense. And, I think that's going to be the storyline from this game. The defense is not going to be talked about a whole lot in this game, right? It's going to be Baker Mayfield, the offense, and for good reason. I mean, they were terrific today, but, the defense also did their job. Basically allowed 14 points. I mean, it's going to say 20, but I mean, they score with a minute left. So, I thought the defense did a pretty good job, outside of you'd like to see a little bit more sacks, maybe a takeaway or two, but sacks are going to be tough to come by when it's a guy that's elusive, right? And a guy who can break out of things as good as Jaden Daniels can. But it was like I said, they did their job on Sunday.
Yeah, linebacker Servassier Dennis, I think, is going to be one of 2 guys that we talk a lot about here in the early goings of the Buccaneers season. Joe Tryon-Shoyinka going to be the other one. And you talked about him earlier. Thought he had a solid game today as well. Was able to nab himself a sack. I thought there were a couple of other plays where he could have, been the first one there, but he was definitely involved in quite a few plays today in the backfield. Hoping that, again, when the Bucs start to play better teams down the stretch here, he can consistently show up, because you've got a pass rush that after today, you're going to need everyone who can step up to step up. One, just because of the injuries in the backfield as well. Your secondary going to be a little bit thin, but, you're already missing guys on this defensive line. Hoping you can get Cansey back for next week. Logan Hall, will tell you what his status is when we find out. But guys are going to continue to have to step up, because you're going to play better offensive lines, and you're going to have to produce a lot more than 2 sacks.
Yeah, obviously, quiet day from Yaya Diaby, but again, you have to remember this guy didn't play like at all. He hasn't played for over a month, so getting your feet wet, a little bit. So I'm not really going to hold him to that. I think, like I said, I think probably the most disappointing thing today was the breaking of contain, and how much I figured that should have and would have been a point of emphasis for the guy, Jaden Daniels. And it seemed like they were doing it awfully consistently, but clearly something happened, because something changed to where, in the second half, Daniels didn't run like he did, in that first half. He really did a nice job of limiting that, whatever adjustments they made. And he hurt him in the first half with his legs. Didn't do that as much. So I do think whatever adjustments they may have made, whether it was on the defensive line, whether it was the linebackers, the safeties coming down, helping out, whatever it may be, I think it helps when not only, okay, like you can have him spy, you can have Levante David spy or Antoine Whitfield, whatever. I think it helps when you don't have much of a threat like outside, like the receivers. Like you're not as scared to get beat over the top because the talent's just not really there on the other side. So I think that makes things a little bit easier. But again, they did a job, and every time things got dicey, whatever, they would get a stop, and then the offense would score. And when the offense, let's say the one time the offense punted, the defense got a stop, and then the offense scored, and that was that. So I think both sides were playing complementary football. Especially the offense only punting once certainly puts the defense in some good spots. You're not in no turnovers. You're not putting the defense in very many difficult positions. So pretty good day.
392 total yards, 37 points for this Buccaneers offense. Believe it or not, they could have been even better. They probably could have had 50 points and maybe 450 total yards of offense. One of the areas that the Bucs are definitely going to have to improve and clean up are the penalties. Quite a few back-breaking penalties, and I know that when it's early in the season like this, you can kind of shrug it off as like week one mistakes. That's how I'm going to write it off. I will refer to it as week one mistakes because you know what? Stuff like that happens. You cannot let yourself get hung up on it. You got to clean it up and move on. But at least 2 scoring drives, I think, today where the Bucs could have found themselves in the end zone, had to take a field goal or not any points at all just because of, dumb penalties that knock them out of position. And that's definitely something that has to get cleaned up. But, again, if they clean that up, we're talking about a team potentially dropping 50 points today next to the Saints team that may have already done that against the Panthers. But, the Bucs could have had an even more impressive afternoon than they already did.
Yeah, certainly. And let me just talk about the Panthers for a second.
Yeah, we will wrap up with the NFC South here.
Okay. Well, all right. Well, then I'll touch on the Bucs offense first, and then we'll do a little NFC South recap because it was rough. Well, I think if you're a Bucs fan, you're pretty happy with today's results. So despite obviously the Saints getting a win, look, it's an NFC South game. One of them has to win. So I think the worst outcome would actually be a tie, probably because it really doesn't hurt as much. But yeah, the offense again, they did what they needed to do, especially on third down. I thought third down was very important, and 13 third downs, it's a higher number. I think you'd like to not be in as many third downs. I think that'd be something you'd want to avoid. But again, and the field goals, right? So they scored on their first 5 possessions, 2 touchdowns and 3 field goals. They open up with 2 straight field goals. You want to make that better, right? Your first drive was 7 plays, 32 yards, kick the field goal. Second drive, 9 plays, 46 yards, kick the field goal. And then, you had a 13-play drive, 49 yards, took 7 minutes off the clock, but ended with a field goal. So you're doing a lot of things right. It's just, you just got to be better. You got to be better at putting the ball in the end zone. And I think that would be that's a big deal.
We got a $2 super chat from our Cannon Fire crew. Joel Elrican checking in.
Awesome.
Says Chef Baker was cooking today. Go Bucs, and a toast there. Yeah, appreciate you checking in, Joe. Joel, thank you very much. An impressive day for Baker Mayfield and this Buccaneers offense. Evan, continue. Just wanted to get that in there.
Yeah, absolutely. Shout out to the Cannon Fire crew for supporting us. Really appreciate it. I think where this game really turned, though, like where it was like, okay, they're gonna win, because it was so the Bucs had just the Bucs punted, okay, and then the Commanders scored a touchdown to make it 23-14. First pass was a 5-yard gain. Okay. The second play on a 2nd and 5 was the screen pass to Rachaad White. That was originally called back because of Graham Barton, the ineligible man downfield. Then the replay reversed it. I think that's where the game turned. The Buccaneers end up scoring a touchdown on that drive. Capped off, I Bleav that was the Jalen McMillan one. So a touchdown on that drive. And to me, that was almost like the dagger because, like I said, the Bucs had punted, the Commanders had scored, and then the Bucs got the ball again. If that gets called back, if that call stands and that play doesn't happen, it not only gets called back, but you actually lose yards. I don't know, the game maybe goes a little bit of a different way. The Bucs may still win and probably do still win, but I think that was the complete turning point where like, okay, like they got it in the bag, and this one's done. So just a key play, I thought, a key moment in the game there for the Bucs, and a great play call. It's a great play call to sort of neutralize what Washington was trying to do. They brought a lot of pressure up the middle, which we expected them to do. A lot of different looks there, and I thought the screen game really, really hurt the Commanders today. And so kudos to Liam Cohen and everybody. Not only Liam Cohen for drawing it up, but the players for executing it, because a screen game a lot of times you can draw it up a perfect screen, but the players got to execute. There's a lot of guys that got to block. The timing has to be right, and it was today.
Yeah, absolutely. Some things to clean up along the offensive line. I thought for the most part they did a decent job today. Only one sack given up. Tristan Wirfs played a decent game. Luke Gedeke as well. Cody
they did a decent job, but I mean, Baker did help him a little bit.
Yeah,
he did avoid some.
Yeah, there were quite a few moments where Baker had to kind of improvise and make something out of nothing there. So not the best start, but they were decent, right? Only one sack given up. I do think Cody Malk had his moments today. Probably going to look for him.
I thought the entire interior, I thought, was like they've had some moments.
Graham Barton making his first rookie start. He got lucky on that illegal man downfield.
Yeah.
I was going to be very upset if that was able to, if that was going to be taking away that 32-yard gain the Bucs had picked up there. But I thought he played decent, pretty good speed, getting up to the second level, blocking downfield, setting up some run lanes later on in the game for a guy like Bucky Irving to run the ball as effectively as he did. So again, some things to clean up, but as with week one, you put something out there to build on, and that's what they're going to do here throughout the next couple of weeks. Some tough opponents coming up. Detroit in a playoff rematch next week for the Bucs on the road. Let's talk about the NFC South. Actually, before we do that, let's get to one more caller, potentially the last call of the show. 770, you were on the Can and Fire podcast. Who's this?
Hey, this is Corey from Nashville.
Hey, how he is.
Corey, what's up, man?
How you guys doing? Man, it's all good, baby. Good. Nothing like a win in the NFL. You only get 17 of these things. Used to be 16, but you only get 17 of these things, and there's a couple teams I know that would love to not be 0-1 today, right? He is losing to the Patriots. That's hilarious. Liam Cohen. So this offense, it looks like, and I alluded to this on some of the talk shows there for the off season. I was very impressed with what I saw because I knew what I was going to see, because it looks like a Sean McVay offense that isn't only Cooper Kupp, right? Like one punt, 37 points. We dropped what should have been a touchdown, so we really should have had maybe about 44 points today. Like, that's ridiculous. That's crazy. And the efficiency, our quarterback has over 70% completion, 4 touchdowns. Didn't make one turnover-worthy play as far as throwing the football. Everything was spot on. Everything was crisp because of the weapons. Mike Evans is Mike Evans. Chris Godwin, just Mr. Do-It-All. Rashad White and Bucky Irving. It's early. It's very early. But in today's NFL, this may be the best 1-2 punch off the top of my head in the NFL. Maybe Detroit's maybe a little better just because they've been there, done that, and it's their second year doing it with Gibbs and Montgomery. So they may be a little better. But as far as explosiveness and what's going to happen in our EPA on our run game, when it's all said and done, I think this is going to be one of the best in the NFL, if not the best. Just the overall efficiency, because you can't stack the box against us, right? Like the Commanders' strength was it is their front seven. You got multiple first-round picks, so it's just on the D-line alone. And those guys were really good. I thought Graham Barton was a huge – hey, I'm sorry.
She's excited. I get it, man.
I thought Graham Barton was a huge get. And to be honest, with him being the only off the top of my head, I believe he was the only interior offensive lineman drafted in the.
Corey, you there?
Whatever the case may be.
There he is.
But Graham Barton's ability to protect. Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. You're good. Go ahead.
All right. Sorry about that. But Graham Barton's ability to come in as a rookie week one, game one, and to kind of solidify some things in the middle. He had a tough matchup today with Allen and Payne, but I thought he held up really well today. very concerned about the defense. Not from a schematic standpoint, from a health standpoint. It was just a tweet came out that Antoine Winfield left the game in a boot. So and I hope that was just preliminary, but we'll know more obviously by tomorrow and Wednesday, because Tuesday's the day off. But I'm very excited. I'm a Tampers week 1. I understand that. Last point I'm gonna make. I'm keep it strictly in the division. What we saw today was a quarterback on our team that's completely comfortable and in command of a system. And what we saw in Atlanta is the exact opposite.
It's true.
I don't know if you guys got a chance to watch that Falcons game. Kirk Cousins was not comfortable at all. And it doesn't help if you're going against TJ Watt, he's the best defensive player in the NFL. I'm sorry. It's not even an argument.
Yeah.
What he did today, he had 2 stats in the box score today. He had he had a tackle and a sack and a fumble recovery, but he completely dominated the Falcons today. Unbelievable. It was such a masterclass to watch. That's my call. That's me, guys. I'll talk to you guys on next week.
Right,
Corey, great hearing from you, my friend. Have a good one. We'll talk to you soon. Go Bucs.
All right, go Bucs.
Yes, sir. So as Corey kind of said, he's talking about some of these different wide receiver rooms around the NFL. And I will say, we know what Mike Evans is. We know what Chris Godwin is. A lethal 1-2 punch. I think, although they're in the AFC, I think Houston's got a pretty good wide receiver room. What they're building over there with Tank Dell, Nico Collins, and then now Stephon Diggs being in the equation as well. Going to be interesting to see them. But going back to my point about the wide receiver room here, what is so exciting for the Bucs in 2024 is Mike Evans going to continue to dominate. He showed us today that he's capable of doing that. Chris Godwin, we are expecting an uptick in that production. He's already been a highly productive wide receiver too. But now that he's playing back out of the slot in this offense, you expect an uptick in that production. So we know what his possible ceiling is, especially in a contract year. But the potential upside of Jalen McMillan is, I think, going to be the most exciting part of this entire season. Because when you talk about Baker Mayfield starting to feel comfortable, obviously has a strong grasp of this offensive system, how it's going to work, and what receivers he's going to have available, I think the more available that Jalen McMillan can make himself throughout the rest of the season is going to dictate how well the Bucs throw the ball. Because if guys are getting open like they were today, the Bucs offense, I think, can really sling with any team in the NFL. And maybe that's a week 1 overreaction. Maybe I'm getting ahead of myself here because, again, they did play Washington. I want to see how they look against better teams, but damn, dude. I mean, for wide receiver 3, I know only 1 catch, but aside from a couple of overthrows, Jalen McMillan did a good job making himself available for Baker Mayfield today.
And that's the important thing because, Mike Evans and Chris Godwin are going to attract so much attention that I think it's important for McMillan to find those openings and to be able to get open and create separation. So, and also to scheme him open. There was a few times, I think, to try and scheme him open. That first one, where they almost had the touchdown, it went off his fingertips. That, to me, seemed like a set play to try and scheme him open. So we do have the tweet from Pewter Report here regarding Antoine Winfield. Said something to monitor as the week goes on. Bucs All-Pro safety Antoine Winfield Jr. had a boot on his right foot in the locker room after the game. Seemed to be in good spirits, but obviously something worth keeping an eye on. So again, we'll just have to, as the injury report goes, you won't probably hear any update about it. Monday, probably Bowles isn't going to say anything about it. Tuesday, they're off. And so Wednesday, we'll get our first injury report and have an update for you guys then. But yeah, I mean, back to the offense. Because, again, that's what's going to be the big talking point today. I think when you have guys as good as Chris Godwin and Mike Evans, the one thing Jim McMillan needs to do is just be able to get open when he needs to. And so far, so good. And I mean, Trey Palmer, while he had some frustrating moments, I think pre-snap stuff. And again, I think that's sort of the parts of a new offense that get a little tricky. A lot of your pre-snap motions. All right, where do I line up here? Where do I line up there? In terms of the rule book, basically, what's legal, what's not. Okay, he wants me to line up here, this and that. I think that's sort of stuff that gets complicated at times. It can be sort of complex, especially in offense. I think once guys to move around, once guys to keep moving. Trey Palmer had a nice catch on a nice throw from Baker, but he had a nice catch as well. So, he's gonna get involved. So the Bucs got all 4 guys involved. Hey, Cameron Johnson got an end around, didn't really go anywhere. Which again, I kind of hope that, okay, if you're going to do that, right, and let's say that's not the last time they're going to do that, but I kind of hope that, they don't, Let's like, okay, next week in Detroit, like, Cameron Johnson end
Overdo it.
around, because then it becomes obvious, like, okay, when he's in, it's the end around. Like, you're gonna have to mix it up a little bit with your looks there. I thought it was interesting they had McMillan line up in the backfield a few times, so I wonder if you see some trickery with that occasionally throughout the season. So, yeah, overall though, a pretty encouraging start by the Bucs offense, but that McMillan in particular, even though he didn't do a ton of stat wise, right? It wasn't like, it was a touchdown, but it was only one catch. Yeah, I think he definitely, showed out.
Yeah, excited to see the creativity with some of these younger wide receivers, guys looking to make plays in this offense. Gotta look out for the illegal formation penalties.
Yeah.
Luckily, the Bucs didn't have any issues with that this week. But it may be an issue for a lot of teams around the NFL because we've seen a lot of it in week 1. Let's wrap up this week's post-game show and take a trip around the NFC South. Evan, who do you want to talk about first? You want to talk about primetime Kirk Cousins, or you want to talk about
I gotta talk
Coach
about the
Canales?
Falcons. I gotta talk about the Falcons losing to a team that didn't score a touchdown. I mean, come on, Chris Boswell beat them. So
the
clutch.
Justin Fields era has begun in the Steel City.
Yeah. It's so obviously Russell Wilson was supposed to start. It ends up being Justin Fields, and Russell Wilson is hurt. So, and they don't need a touchdown to beat Kirk Cousins and the Falcons. I mean, look, I will cut Kirk some slack because he is coming off a major injury, first football game in a while, in a new offense, in a new environment, but not an encouraging start for a team that paid Kirk Cousins a whole lot of money. You were hoping for better than that. So, I don't think this is going to be the Falcons every single week, but an encouraging start for the Buccaneers and opposite of that for the Falcons.
Yeah, I think the Falcons went out there and they looked like a team who is going to have to struggle to find their identity. And they look like a team that it's going to take until week 7 or 8 for them to kind of figure out what that's going to be. It's part of the process. You've got a new system, new staff, new players, new playbook. Yep. It's par for the course. But again, just like you said, the Steelers aren't really a team that's scaring anybody this year, regardless of who they have at quarterback. So I think this kind of start for the Falcons, especially at home, they looked very unorganized out there. A lot of boneheaded mistakes, and I think that's putting it lightly.
You talk about trying to find identity and how it's going to take 6 or 7 weeks. The Bucs play the Falcons twice in the first 8 weeks of the season. Like the Bucs get done with the Falcons very quickly in this season. So, and that might be a good thing. That might be an advantage for Tampa Bay, to play the Falcons earlier rather than later, when they're still trying to find themselves. So I think the Bucs play the Falcons the first time in about a month or so. So, it'll be, it's October 3rd, so it's less than a month that the Bucs play the Falcons for the first time. So that might be an advantage Buccaneers. So Falcons though, if you guys don't know, the Falcons lost to the Steelers 18-10. They started 0-1 on the season. So the Falcons and Panthers are the two teams in the NFC South started 0-1. Then we have two 1-0 teams with the Buccaneers and the Saints, and that'll lead into a segue for the other NFC South game, which featured two NFC South opponents, one who looks much different than the other, even though I wouldn't put much stock in it. I wouldn't put too much stock in it. But man, ugly times and some dark roads ahead, I think, for the team in Carolina.
Rough first day at the office for head coach Dave Canales up there in Carolina. Bryce Young, they look like 2023. They look like they picked up exactly where they left off. The Carolina Panthers did. I think a lot of people aren't going to be holding their breath waiting for them to win a game this year. I think they play the Giants next week, correct?
Yes. No, the Panthers. No, that's the game in Germany.
God. So we're not going to be waking up early for that one, is what you're saying. Could potentially be the battle for the number 1 pick there between New York and Carolina, but 47-10 against Derek Carr and the New Orleans Saints today. Derek Carr at quarterback for the Saints, 19 for 23, 200 yards, 3 touchdowns, no picks. They were able to take care of the football. Alvin Kamara also had a big-time day. 15 carries, 83 yards, and a touchdown for him, averaging 5.5 yards a tote. Rashid Shaheed had a touchdown pass as well. He played well. Are the Panthers this bad, or are the Saints this good? I think is going to be the big takeaway from this week 1 contest.
The former.
Right.
The Saints are not look, and maybe the Saints were a bit underrated or whatever. Who knows, right? But I just think it's a sign of the Panthers being this bad. I just do not see it with Bryce Young. I never did. And it's, man, yeah, I don't get it. And a rough first showing. And Dave Canales, coming out, loses his first game 47-10. His quarterback, throws for 162 yards, 13 completions. Not great, but I mean, you're gonna find out. I mean, New Orleans' next two opponents are Dallas and Philly, so two much tougher opponents. I think you'll find more out about New Orleans in that 2-game stretch there than you did this week.
Maybe it feels sweeter than usual this year, but Evan, I feel like it's been a really good last 2 weeks of football here between the start of the college season and the NFL season. A lot of entertaining games. I thought Thursday, Friday night were both really good games. The dramatic finish in Kansas City and Baltimore, then obviously the game in Brazil between the Packers and the Eagles. There's just a lot of good things, a lot of good games happening this week, and the Bucs' performance was the cherry on top, but this is a very exciting time of year, and we're diving into our 2024 season of coverage here, full speed, with the Buccaneers giving us as much as they did today to talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to thank all you guys, for joining us, for calling in. Well over 200 people in here at one point. So for week one, off to a hot start, and the Buccaneers themselves are off to a hot start. So yeah, we'll be here, every game, win, lose, or draw, post-game show. Obviously, we're back in the full swing of things for the season. So yeah, be sure to not miss a game preview, not miss a game review. Check out our content during the week, which will be more short form videos, but still there. I Bleav we have our Tuesday show that we usually do. So yeah, we got a bunch of content for the Buccaneers coming out. And again, it's always easier when on a week when it's like people when like I predict them to lose or whatever, like, oh, you're rooting against them. Like, it's much easier to talk about a team that's doing good than a team that's doing bad. Like, you don't really want to sit there. Like, if you're covering the Panthers right now, you don't want to sit there and say how much your first overall pick sucks. I mean, you don't want to be doing that, right? Like, that's no fun. So, like, well, like, I don't want them to lose. It's just what I think sometimes. So, it's much easier to cover a team that wins 37-20 than a team that loses 47-10.
Buccaneers quarterback Baker Mayfield's rating today of 146.4 is the second best ever against Washington for a quarterback with 30-plus passes. You know who has the only better game? Any guesses?
I'm trying to think.
It's a household name.
Household name.
Yeah, very popular quarterback.
Still plays?
No, retired somewhat recently.
Is it Brady? It's the only other one I can think of retired recently. I mean,
it was the record was set in a 1962 game by Giants quarterback Y.A. Tittle.
Retired recently, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he retired recently. That's a great
Giants
hint.
legend Y.A. Tittle, a household name. I told you.
I mean, Y.A. Tittle is I know why. Like, Y.A. Tittle is a household name.
Yeah.
Like, but like that's retired recently. Yep.
Yeah. He had 151.4 QB rating against Washington. Ladies and gentlemen, that's just about going to do it for today's episode of the Cannon Fire Podcast. I want to say thank you to each and every person who hung out with us today over on the YouTube channel. Hopefully we got a lot of new faces for the 2024 season. If you are new, consider subscribing to the channel and becoming a member of the Cannon Fire crew to directly support the show.
Tittle retired in 1964. My dad wasn't even born yet.
Yeah,
but it's recent.
Yeah, it's somewhat. I thought you'd know. I thought you'd be a little more fresh with your NFL trivia there.
Yeah.
Thank you to Dub. Thank you to Richard T on the West Coast. Thank you to Brandon Funk. Thank you to Matt Diaz, Corey Richardson for calling in, our good buddy MK, Cannon Fire crew, Joel L. Rican, Wontons. That's a great screen name. John Friday 13. The Play Reaction. Buccaneers YouTube legend checking in our live chat. Thank you guys so much. Anybody else that I may have missed, we appreciate you. We will talk to you later this week with some more insight and hopefully updates on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Any injury news, we will do our best to keep you guys updated. Follow the show on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. All of those are Cannon Fire Podcast. Best place to go for updates on the show. And, of course, Tampa Bay Buccaneer news as it happens. before we talk more about Tampa Bay Buccaneer news as it happens, you cannot talk about it without talking about the Autograph app, Evan.
Mm-hmm.
Very proud partner.
Right about that.
Yeah, you cannot forget about that. We almost did. Very proud partner of the Cannon Fire podcast. And listen, I know that we ham it up. I know that we talk a lot about it because they are a sponsor, but I'm being dead serious. Listen, I'm talking to you man to man right now. All right. I'm looking directly in the camera here. I'm looking at you.
Mm-hmm.
You need to download the Autograph app today. All right. If you are looking for one app that has all of your Tampa Bay Buccaneer news in one place, including the Cannon Fire podcast, you need to go download the Autograph app. They curate the best content, tickets, and gear to help you fan to your full potential. Listen, Evan, we all know that being a fan is a full-time job, so Autograph does the heavy lifting for you. From tickets for big matchups to breaking news, the Autograph app has curated content for fans of all things Tampa Bay, all the podcasts, articles, and game predictions you could ever want. The new replay feature lets you get the day's news without the noise for when you need the TLDR to start your day. Use promo code BUCS to download for free on Google Play or the Apple App Store today. Once again, promo code BUCS, BUCS. You've also got the QR code down on that bottom right corner of the screen if you are watching us with video today. Listen, I'm gonna be honest with you too. We almost didn't do this show at this time. We probably would have been starting now because I was very close, Evan, to going to the game today. I found a deal with my Autograph tokens. I could have had 2 tickets to today's home opener in Raymond James Stadium for under $100. I think the 2 tickets together with my discount code, it was right around $94. If you need to get in the door,
can only find that on the Autograph app too.
You could only find those tickets on the Autograph app. Listen, there's all of that and then some. I implore you guys, please check it out. Thank you once again to Autograph for sponsoring today's
and
show.
if it makes you feel any better, it's founded by Tom Brady. If that makes you feel any better, TB12 founded it. So.
Right. Yeah. It's not like just some scrub company. It's not like they have some investors. It's not like it's something that's just going to fade out in a couple of months here. This is something that they have worked very, very hard on these last couple of seasons, and they launched out of beta just a couple of weeks ago, co-founded by Tom Brady. A lot of great things going on. Thank you to fine folks at Autograph for giving us a chance, and excited to be a proud partner here on the Cannon Fire podcast. Find our show on social media, just like I said, but you can also find my co-host Evan on social media, Instagram and Twitter at EvanNFL. And you can find him on Instagram at Bucs.
Twitter, Evan NFL, Instagram.
I threw off the script. Tell the people where they can find you.
Instagram, Twitter, Evan NFL. You can find all my written work on BucsNation.com. Instagram, you can find me at Bucs_daily for Buccaneers content. So without further ado, Rhett, throw it back to you to send us home.
Yeah, let's get the hell out of here. You can find myself on Instagram and Twitter at Retticus, RHETTAKUS. If you follow me, I will follow you back. But that's the show. Thank you once again, ladies and gentlemen, for hanging out with us. We will keep you updated. More Bucs news and updates throughout the rest of the week. We'll talk to you soon. I'm your host, Rhett Matthew, signing off from my co-host, Evan Wanish. We'll see you in the next one. Until then, and as always, go Bucs.